West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
Republicans on Capitol Hill continue to shirk any sense of responsibility or accountability for what happened on January 6th. It's all part of the former president's big lie that's not limited just to Washington. Those lawmakers, along with the former president, have hammered that lie so hard and hammered it so often that it's spread beyond the Capitol and to the rest of the country. It's now basically the price for entry for statewide Republican candidates running for office in Arizona. One candidate there is even suspected of being Q, the leader of QAnon. A reminder, Arizona is where Republicans spent months conducting a so-called audit that found no proof to support the former president's false claims of a stolen election. These candidates are dug in, and some are talking to CNN's Kyung La.
No masks in here? Another round of applause. Of course, the media's all masked up because they want to spread the fear.
This is our introduction to Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, a Donald Trump-endorsed Republican candidate for 2022. Rising star of the right wing and proud spreader of lies about the 2020 election results.
You could say Biden won the presidency kind of like OJ is innocent. It's the same kind of...
You're amazing.
Lake is among a group of 2022 Arizona candidates putting election falsehoods at the heart of their candidacy.
You know what this is?
Secretary of State candidate Mark Fincham, also endorsed by Trump.
Great job, Mark. You're going to win big, Mark.
Is repeating the very lie Trump wants followers to believe.
By removing the fraud, Donald Trump won.
Ignoring facts and reality, Fincham, a four-term state representative, wants to be Arizona's chief elections officer.
Hi.
But Lake has gained early attention, a presumed frontrunner in Arizona.
I'm Kari Lake with a look at the top stories.
A longtime former Phoenix television anchor who quit her job. Lake has built-in name ID and a dedicated following, like the students who insisted on gathering around her.
You have a crowd. Hi, everyone.
As she agreed to speak with CNN.
Are you going to win? I believe we will, yeah.
A cornerstone of Lake's campaign, baseless fraud claims raised by the Republican-led sham review of Maricopa County's 2020 presidential election.
The system is corrupt. Have you not followed what's happening in our election here? Absolutely. I covered the audit.
Relentlessly repeating misinformation.
Do you think that it was the right thing to do to delete a bunch of million files the day before the audit?
That was roundly debunked.
No.
Not by the press, but by the Maricopa County Recorder's Office.
Well, you're buying into everything they say. These are the same people who did not want this forensic audit. I know what you guys are trying to do. You don't give a damn about our elections. You've got a narrative, and you're trying to push it.
And what is that narrative?
The narrative is everything, it's frauded, it's fake. I will be damned if when I'm governor, we're going to have another election run this way.
I'm afraid for our future.
Tyler Montag is an Arizona Republican strategist who fears the damage of his party's election-denying candidates.
They have a losing message. They are strongly identified with the conspiracy that the election was stolen from Trump, and a strong majority of the voting public does not believe this.
Hey everybody, I just went behind enemy lines.
Ron Watkins, the man many internet sleuths believe is the Q behind the QAnon conspiracy theory, is another denier of the truth.
Okay.
A long-shot Republican hopeful for Arizona's 1st congressional district. The first-time candidate just moved to Arizona to run for office.
What do you think happened in November 2020?
President Trump did win the election, and that the election was certified to President Biden, and that Biden is currently occupying the White House, but the de facto leader is still President Trump.
But President Trump didn't win the election.
Despite overwhelming evidence against it, Watkins believes there was fraud.
Well, it could potentially be 100,000. It could be 1 million votes. We don't know because the databases were deleted, and
they're still there.
Well, Miss Law, let me tell you, everybody has a superpower, and I'm a computer programmer, and my superpower is abstract math, and I'm able to look and see things and patterns that most people are not looking for.
While he denies his rumored role as Q.
And I'm not Q. I've never posted as Q. I don't know who Q is.
Watkins is an influential leader. Trump retweeted him multiple times leading up to the January 6th Capitol riot, telling followers to go to the Capitol. Some waving Q flags led the violent insurrection. To this day, Watkins struggles to see the consequences of the conspiracies he spreads, including what happened on January 6th.
They were there because they were upset that their
Were they wrong for what they did?
I'm not going to go into what was right or wrong. What I will go into is that
people who stormed the Capitol trying to kill representatives, you're not going to condemn that?
Peacefully, and
you're not going to condemn what they did.
I condemn crazy people doing crazy things.
The Capitol rioters.
Look, Miss Law, I condemn crazy people doing crazy things, and
but not the Capitol rioters.
Are they crazy people doing crazy things?
Storming the U.S. Capitol?
That's a pretty crazy thing, and crazy people did that, and I condemn crazy people doing crazy things.
Once on the fringe, conspiracy theorists and election deniers are now leading candidates, fighting to bring their beliefs and their base into the halls of power. This time, not by force, but by vote, with one catch.
Do you agree with President Trump when he says that Republicans should not vote unless 2020 is adjudicated again?
I think that everyone should vote. I think everyone should vote.
Kyung-La joins us now. Wow. You've spent a lot of time in Arizona recently. Do you get the sense that voters buy into the big lie as much as these candidates do?
Well, there's a reason that the candidates, at least these particular candidates, think it's a winning strategy. Because if you talk to a certain section of voters, especially very conservative, Republicans and sections of the state, yeah, they buy it. They believe in it. But here's the problem, and here's what a lot of moderate Republicans or center-right Republicans are telling me, that in the general election, in a purpling state, it is not a winning formula. That if anything, this is hurting the Republican Party's future here in the state of Arizona, because instead of talking about the policies of the Republican Party that can draw more voters in, what they're talking about are lies and conspiracies. And in a state that has a history of Republicans, Anderson, like Barry Goldwater, John McCain, they don't believe that this is the DNA of the state.
I got to say, just watching Kyung-La talk to some of the candidates in Arizona was super depressing. I just want to play one thing that one of them said.
The system is corrupt. Have you not followed what's happening in our election here?
Absolutely. I covered the audit.
Do you think that it was the right thing to do to delete a bunch of million files the day before the audit?
That was roundly debunked.
No.
Not by the press, but by the Maricopa County Recorder's Office.
Well, you're buying into everything they say. These are the same people who did not want this forensic audit. I know what you guys are trying to do. You don't give a damn about our elections. You've got a narrative, and you're trying to push it.
And what is that narrative?
The narrative is everything, it's fraud, it's fake.
I mean, first of all, she was allegedly an anchor or newscaster or something, which I don't know how to even wrap my mind around that. This is super depressing. I mean, I don't know if she believes that or if she knows this will get her that bunch, help her in the primary, and she's willing to be a shiny, happy liar.
Anderson, a couple of things come to mind. One is something that I said to you in our conversation before the election. Country not right. Country not right. Our country is not right. But given that, what is even more depressing to me is we have one party who, as we advance into the 21st century, we have so many things to think about. And their candidate, their main position is a big lie that Donald Trump won the last election. There's no diagnosis of the world, global trends, needs of education, needs of corporations. They are running on a big lie. Against them is a party running on a big idea, a big idea. But they have not sold that idea effectively. The Democratic Party, given where the Republicans are right now, Anderson, should be wiping the floor with them. And yet we're watching the Virginia election coming up and wondering if Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate, will squeak by. So I think we have to ask a couple of questions. One, how did this party get so crazy, this Republican Party? But what's going on with the Democrats that they aren't just sweeping the floor when they've got a big idea against a big lie?
It is Thursday, the 21st of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, how are you? It is Thursday, meaning we're getting on to the weekend. And I have some fabulous, wonderful news. Well, it's news to those of you who probably missed it on social media. A lot have responded, and thank you for the responses. But the great news is my mother, will be returning home today from the hospital after spending just about a month recovering from COVID and, I can't really call it a little heart attack, but it was a heart attack. And she's coming home, 84 years old. She's pretty tough. And, of course, the vaccine helped a lot. My sister, the nurse, will be picking her up about noonish. And I have a few things to do. Just the last little bit of picking up. And those sorts of things. Maybe organize her room a little bit better. She's got things a little packed in. She has a huge room, but she likes to make things small by getting as much stuff in there as possible. Well, that's that. But this is great news. We were a bit worried there, as you probably know. It was touch and go for a while, and so she had pneumonia. Also, that was another issue, part of the COVID problem, but it was also part of an issue, and we should all remember this. The reason my mother had pneumonia is because she had at some point aspirated some food. What that means, and my mother is guilty of this, and we've always told her, hey, Ma, wait. But I think now she knows, because she voiced it. Once you voice it, once you name it, you can attend to it. And what is that issue? Well, she was eating while not sitting up. Leaning back. So now she's in the habit of actually, when she was able to at the point, as part of her rehabilitation, get out of the bed, sit at a table. Okay. What was that thing that our parents always told us when we were growing up? Get out here and sit at the table with the family. Okay? You're not eating in your room there in your desk or in your bed. We never ate in the bed. I hated eating in the bed. The reason why is that I hated crumbs like crackers on my bed. And no matter what you did, there's always like a little crumb that gets on your bed when you eat in your bed. And I hate that, especially on the sheets. So eating in bed, I always thought that was like kind of gross. The idea of TV trays and all that, or, well, the trays that you bring in, to be able to eat in bed, that, oh yeah, okay, then you got a little table there at least. But even then, crumbs will find their way. Okay. Always hated that. Get up, sit at a table, sit up straight. Chew all of your food. Okay, well, she said that they served her cordon bleu. And she said she loved it. Well, of course you would. Cordon bleu is a wonderful dish. But the thing that I was amazed at is that I thought she had to have, like, things maybe the consistency of stew. And everything has to be pretty darn soft. So, I don't know, maybe she's able to eat much more solid food than I was anticipating, which is good. She has exercises to strengthen her swallowing muscles. I guess at 84, you have to start thinking about that. And also, she had been intubated, and that has something to do with her exercising to get those muscles back because, they get a little damage when you get intubated. Okay, well, I can't tell you how happy I am. Whatever problems that you might have with your parents, and I got to say, in the bigger scheme of things, I didn't really have, like debilitating issues with my parents, my mom or dad growing up. A lot of issues that my friends had astounded me to the point where I thought I had to make a few things up so that I go, yeah, I got some really bad parents too, just like my friends. Because by and large, our parents were accommodating, encouraging. Mom, I will say, she had a tough life. So let's just say that athletic and academic pursuits wasn't anything that, meant much to her because she wasn't around when they would have mattered when she was a girl. She was pretty much trying to survive in the world because her life was, I got to say, pretty tough. Anyway, we were allowed to pretty much, choose our way. So we thought. I think that there was a lot of guidance there, too. I did the same sort of technique or strategy with my son. You're there to sort of like, I think you're straying off to the edge of the plank here. You don't want to fall off in the middle. You want to fall off at the end, okay? Because there is a way of things, and those ways don't change much, except for one, and that is, maybe we need to incorporate a hell of a whole lot more love in our daily lives. So this challenge of my mom getting well again to bring her back home, I consider that to be an act of love. An act of love on my mother's part, an act of love on the people who helped her. And so any petty disagreements seem rather pale and petty in comparison to the finality of what life is. I always thought, if for some reason I was on a bus and the bus drove over a cliff and there's that moment of time before you crash at the bottom, what you say, I always thought that I didn't want to be yelling the F word all the way down. I always thought that it would be nice on the way out to express love for those around me and those in my heart. Yeah, I'm a romantic. So the idea of having some sort of petty squabble, and that's the thing that you were dealing with before you no longer had your loved one around. God, I don't want to have it be that way. No way. So, is there a world of second chances? Apparently in America there is. Supposed to have a lot of second chances in America. And we get one again here in our family, and I'm going to embrace it because a lot of times tragedies or potential tragedies focus not so much the mind, but more importantly the heart. Okay, enough of that. What's available here in this salon we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine Thursday morning? Well, I'll tell you. Conspiracy spreading GOP candidates running for elected office in Arizona have that strategist pretty damn afraid for the party's future. Well, you're a little late to the party, pal. Jeez, we could have told you that back when, I don't know, Reagan fired the air traffic controllers. There's always little things. Or when he showed up in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And we all know what that was about. Don't teach that in Texas. They'll throw you in jail for teaching critical race theory. On the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the Army has begun hiring more agents and support staff for its criminal investigations after a string of murders and other crimes at Fort Hood. Yeah, what's up with Fort Hood? Climate change makes drought recovery tougher in the U.S. West, but I got to tell you, there's a caravan of storms ready to come across the border. And the forecast is that it could take all of the wildfires that have been burning uncontrollably and put them out, along with filling reservoirs beyond capacity. Wouldn't that be nice? We'll see. A former California pollution regulator has been tapped to run the Highway Safety Agency. Gosh, we're socialists. After the break, we move to the chef's table where German authorities detained 2 former soldiers from the Bundeswehr who tried to form a mercenary group to intervene in Yemen. What? And New Zealand swears in its first indigenous woman as Governor General. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Would also want to thank Kelly and Ricky for attending Netroots Nation 21 this year. Virtual, albeit virtual, of course. But there is a slew of content, interviews, and whatnot that will be coming up on the program schedule, mostly on the weekends, so stay tuned for that. And you might as well go to the homepage. The program schedule is right there. Yeah, gets updated because we handcraft this radio station. We do. So thank you, Kelly. If you out there in listening land, because this is radio, not video, okay, and it's by design too, a strategy. Anyway, if you could look across the page to the left, there is the Patreon link. And you know what that's about. Yeah, he's going to start asking for money. Well, it's, how about if I just pass around the hat? Nah, I can't do that because we're here. Anyway, if you could afford an espresso type coffee drink and send those funds our way once a month, it really helps. I cannot tell you how much it helps. We're of the mind that we pay our bills. You know, we're not Donald Trump. Okay, we pay our bills. Also, you know what I hate? I always hated this when I was out contracting or going to Mexico to buy a blanket. All this haggling. Just tell me what it's worth. Tell me what you want. I'll pay it. Okay? Don't inflate it. Okay? Tell me what you want. So, I always hated the idea that people like Donald Trump wouldn't pay their bills and then stick the worker. Jesus. Typical, isn't it? Well, I got to tell you, we pay our bills. And because we're able to do that, we're perfectly sized and placed to be able to fly under the radar. Yeah, a little bug in the ointment of this Nazi takeover of the great experiment, because we're here doing our civic duty, and since we pay our bills with help from you, we're able to fulfill that civic duty. And I don't know, throw a little wrench in the machinery, trying to roll over representative democracy. Well, they're not going to do it without some complaints. And we're right, perfectly sized and placed to do that. So thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that and a hell of a whole lot more. In fact, that homepage at netrootsradio.com. Yeah, Tom. Thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, go to @CookbookWest. And most importantly in this whole big spiel is do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay. First offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Lolita C. Baldor. The Army has begun hiring more agents and support staff for its criminal investigations as the new civilian director works to correct widespread failures that surfaced last year after a string of murders and other crimes at Fort Hood, Texas. I got to tell you, there's like 3 women of color right now who are missing, and I think at least one other who they found, and she was dead. What the hell is going on there? Gregory Ford, who took over as head of the Army Criminal Investigation Command, or CID, about a month ago, told reporters yesterday, Wednesday, that he visited Fort Hood last week. He said the hiring process for more than 90 positions has begun, and the Army is already getting a good response from individuals interested in joining CID. A review last year found CID was understaffed and badly organized, with too few experienced investigators. The findings came amid heightened scrutiny after the death of Vanessa Guillen, a soldier whose remains were found about 2 months after she was killed. More than 24 Fort Hood soldiers died in 2020. 24! More than 24! Including homicides and suicides. Guillen's death and the other cases prompted an independent review, which found that CID investigators lacked the acumen to identify key leads and connect the dots in investigations. It said they were the victims of a system that failed to train them and often had them doing administrative tasks. That's just a nice way of saying they were paper pushers. They were not investigators. The Army earlier this year decided to put a civilian in charge of CID, which to date had been led by a general officer. The decision was in line with the review recommendations in an effort to revamp the command. Fort Hood, Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and Fort Carson in Colorado are part of a pilot project that will see some of the early changes and staffing improvements. Ford said the Army has already given agents the opportunity to move to the 3 bases. He said, a key goal is to ensure timely and aggressive investigations that are approached with a sense of urgency in the critical early hours after crimes are reported. You know, the first 48. The level of interest in the job openings, he said, has surpassed everybody's expectations. The posts are a strong draw for individuals who may have been in the military and left to go into law enforcement and are looking for a way to return to the service, he said. He did not give details on the cost of the changes, but said the Army has been providing what is necessary to begin the transformation. Officials have said funding will be provided over the next 5 years. The decision to replace a military leader of SID with a civilian mirrors a similar shift by the Navy in 1992 in the aftermath of the tailhook scandal, when Navy and Marine officers sexually assaulted dozens of women at a hotel in Las Vegas. As a result of sweeping condemnation of the Navy's investigation into the matter, leaders transformed the military-led Naval Investigative Services into the Naval Criminal Investigative Service and appointed a civilian director. Of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Californians rejoiced this week when big drops of water started falling from the sky for the first time in any measurable way since the spring, an annual soaking that heralds the start of the rainy season following some of the hottest and driest months on record. But as the rain began to fall on Tuesday night, Governor Gavin Newsom did a curious thing. He issued a statewide drought emergency and gave regulators permission to enact mandatory statewide water restrictions if they choose. Newsom's order might seem jarring, especially as forecasters predict up to 7 inches of rain could fall in parts of Northern California mountains and the Central Valley this week. But experts say it makes sense if you think of drought as something caused not by the weather, but by climate change. For decades, California has relied on rain and snow in the winter to fill the state's major rivers and streams in the spring, which then feed a massive system of lakes that store water for drinking, farming, and energy production, like a clean battery. But that annual runoff from the mountains is getting smaller, mostly because it's getting hotter and drier, not just because it's raining less. In the spring, California's snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains was 60% of its historical average. But the amount of water that made it to the reservoirs was similar to 2015, when the snowpack was just 5% of its historical average. Nearly all of the water state officials had expected to get this year either evaporated into the hotter air or was absorbed in the drier soil. You don't get into that type of drought that we're seeing in the American West right now just from missing a few storms, said Justin Mencken, a geography professor at Dartmouth College and co-lead of the Drought Task Force at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A warm atmosphere evaporates more water from the land surface and reduces the amount of water available for other uses, like people and hydropower and growing crops, he said. California's water year runs from October 1st to September 30th. The 2021 water year, which just ended, was the second driest on record. The one before that was the 5th driest on record. Some of the state's most important reservoirs are at record low levels. Things are so bad in Lake Mendocino that state officials say it could be completely dry by next summer. Even if California were to have above average rain and snow this winter, warming temperatures mean it still likely won't be enough to make up for all the water California lost. This past year, the state had its warmest ever statewide monthly average temperatures in June, July, and October of 2020. Janine Jones, Interstate Resource Manager for the California Department of Water Resources, said people should not think about drought as being just this occasional thing that happens sometimes, and then we go back to a wetter system. We are really transitioning to a drier system, so dry becomes the new normal, she said. Drought is not a short-term feature. Droughts take time to develop, and they usually linger for quite some time. Kreischer of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A former California pollution regulator is being nominated to run the nation's highway safety agency. President Joe Biden on Tuesday announced his intention to nominate Stephen Cliff, who has served as Deputy Administrator for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration since February, to become the agency's administrator. If confirmed by the Senate, Cliff would take over the agency at a crucial juncture. Highway deaths are rising, battery electric vehicles are upending the auto industry, and vehicle automation is spreading into more models. NHTSA, which sets vehicle safety standards, finds safety defects, manages recalls, and helps to develop government fuel economy requirements, has been without a confirmed administrator since Mark Rosekind left at the end of 2016. I wonder why. What happened then? You know. Auto safety advocates have been calling on Biden to make a nomination so a confirmed administrator can start moving on a safety agenda, which means every single Republican will vote against this nomination, or any nomination. It'll have to be appointed by Joe. The announcement comes 3 days after the AP reported that the agency is struggling with a growing backlog of safety rules that were ordered by Congress that are years overdue and could save thousands of lives. An AP review of rulemaking by NHTSA under the last three presidents found at least 13 auto safety rules past due, including a rear seatbelt reminder requirement passed by Congress in 2012 that was to be implemented by 2015. The pending safety rules have been slowed by bureaucracy or taken a backseat to other priorities. Trump sidetracked at least 4 major road safety proposals that were in development during his term. An estimated 38,680 people were killed in traffic crashes in 2020, the most since 2007. Even though total miles driven dropped at the beginning of the pandemic, in the first 3 months of 2021, 8,730 people died in motor vehicle crashes, a 10.5% increase from the same period last year. Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Ask anyone what an elephant sounds like, and they'll come up with something like this. But some elephants can also do this. And researchers using an acoustic camera that converts sounds into colors have figured out how. The findings appear in the journal BMC Biology. Elephants actually have a few ways they can get their message across. In addition to the traditional trumpet, they also communicate using a rumble whose pitch is often too low for humans to hear.
But then the Asian elephant, and the Asian elephant only, produces ridiculously high-pitched squeaks that seem to come rather from a mouse than from an animal the size of an elephant.
Veronica Bake of the University of Vienna. She and her colleagues set out to locate the source of these unusual chirps.
The only idea that was out there so far was that elephants produce squeaks in the same way as they produce the trumpets.
That is, using their trunk.
So we started out with just observing the facial movements and posture of Asian elephants when they squeak.
First up, a group of 14 adult females at an elephant camp in Nepal.
So first we observed that elephants squeak when they are aroused.
So anytime they get excited or upset.
Then they are easily upset. When there's any strange noise or strange smell, a car passing by in the distance, a dog or a cow coming too close to the enclosure.
They also squeak in social situations.
When they have only been separated briefly and they greet each other again, they burst into exuberant choruses of trumpeting, rumbling, and squeaking.
And even when having a bath. But are the squeaks coming from the trunk or the mouth?
And that is where we use the acoustic camera. With an array of 48 microphones, the acoustic camera can calculate the time differences with which the sound reaches the different microphones and translate it into beautiful rainbow colors, which in the end makes you see rainbow colors coming out of the elephant's mouth or trunk.
And what they found?
The rainbow colors clearly came out of the mouth when the elephant squeaked and out of the trunk when it did the trumpet.
One particularly talented pachyderm, a female called Pauan, could squeak and snort at the same time.
And this told us that clearly the sound production mechanism has to be within the mouth, because otherwise it wouldn't be possible to produce a perfectly fine squeak and a perfectly fine nasal snort at the same time.
The squeak, it appears, is made when an elephant presses air out between its tensed lips, which produces a noisy vibration.
I couldn't find this technique to be described in any other animal except for human trumpet players. They call this technique lip buzzing.
Bake got pretty good at it.
Although I have to admit that it was not that easy to learn, which caused lots of skeptical and annoyed looks on the metro on my daily commute.
Not all elephants make use of this buzz.
In the first study group, only 4 or 14 elephants squeaked, and the ones that did so a lot.
Pauan would start practicing her signature sounds at 4 in the morning. which generally got her the attention she was seeking because
it's extremely annoying.
Studying additional elephants that lived in family groups, the researchers found that when mama is a squeaker, the kids are too.
And that is what made me think that maybe elephants actually have to learn how to squeak and when to squeak from the mother.
Which means that elephants may have something to teach us about the development of human language. And that parents really need to watch their mouths when they're around little ones with big ears. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? But did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Are congressional elections rigged?
I'm Tom Harbin, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Consider Texas, which has had 36 congressional districts and due to the 2020 census now will have 38, and where, under the new map drawn by the legislature, 35 of the 38 seats, 92%, are designed to not be remotely competitive. 92%, thanks to what's called packing and cracking. Packing means packing persons with similar voting patterns into one district. Cracking means breaking up such a group into so many different districts that they can't really influence the outcome in any one. With sophisticated computer programs, these numbers can be calculated and predicted with surgical accuracy, and they have been. Placing the 2020 election results into the new districts shows that Trump would have won 23 of the 38 by double digits, and Biden would have won 12 by double digits, meaning that only 3 of the 38 had a margin of 10 points or less. In addition, despite the very large growth in the Latino population, the new map has no majority Latino district. In 2019, the Supreme Court 5-4 ruled that they would do nothing to interfere with partisan gerrymandering. So in Texas, and in every state where that's the norm, you will now be able to know the results of congressional elections before any ballots are cast. How, you might ask? Can you call such a system a democracy?
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 2001. That was the day that Thomas Morris Jr. died from breathing in anthrax. A week earlier, he had been exposed to the deadly poison when an envelope containing the powdery substance was opened at the mail distribution center where he worked. Thomas Morris was a member of the American Postal Workers Union. His union brother, Joseph Cursine, died 2 days later. Both men worked at the U.S. Postal Service Brentwood Processing and Distribution Center in Washington, D.C. The poisoned letters were addressed to Senators Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy. More postal workers at a distribution center in New Jersey also fell ill from exposure to anthrax-poisoned mail. In total, 22 people were sickened by anthrax that fall from letters addressed to politicians and news outlets. In addition to those injured, 5 people died, including a 7-month-old infant who was visiting NBC News in New York City with his mother who worked there. Coming the month after the September 11th attacks, the anthrax poisoning sent another wave of fear of terrorism throughout the United States. The Brentwood Distribution Center was closed down for decontamination until December 2003. When it reopened, the facility was renamed for the 2 fallen postal workers. The next year, Senator Joe Lieberman gave an address to the APWU. He said, quote, "The postal workers who were exposed to anthrax and still got the mail out and kept our system running. They are proud union members. I know I'll never forget that, and America won't forget that. All of you at the APWU deserve our respect and our support." One person suspected of the poisonings committed suicide, and the case was closed. No one was ever convicted of the crimes. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2. Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a bit warmer than yesterday, bumping 70. And will be partly cloudy here early, though it's actually quite foggy here early. And then becoming cloudy with periods of rain later on this morning. Winds out of the south-southeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And it looks like we're expecting about 1.5 inches of rain today and overnight. We'll have a low of 47 tonight with winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we're looking to get about 1 inch overnight and, just about 1/2 inch today. Then tomorrow, rain showers early with overcast skies later in the days, highs in the upper 50s, winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looking to bring with it, about 1/4 inch. Not too much. Okay, actually, we want it, we need it, and we're going to get it. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to rise. We now stand at 229,011 confirmed cases, with the confirmed deceased increasing another couple, and we now stand at 308. Ragweed pollen is rated at moderate right this moment outside the window in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is at 21 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in the low range, though it has ticked down one more level and stands at 2. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.88 inches. Visibility is at 3 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 53 and fair. Paris is 55 and cloudy.
Rome is 71 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 60 degrees and fair. Kabul is 62 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 65 and cloudy. Tokyo is 60 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 61 degrees and getting that rain that we were reading about in the previous news report. And New York, New York is 66 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. German authorities yesterday, Wednesday, detained 2 former soldiers who were alleged to have tried to form a mercenary group that would have intervened in the military conflict in Yemen. Federal prosecutors said the men, identified only as Erend Adolf J. and Achim A., in keeping with Germany privacy laws, were detained in southern Germany. Both are German citizens and former members of the Bundeswehr. The men are accused of being ringleaders in the formation of a terror organization, prosecutors said in a statement. Together, they are alleged to have decided in early 2021 to create their own mercenary group made up between 100 and 150 former soldiers or members of the police. The men's primary motivation was to earn about $47,000 each per month by offering the group's services to third parties, specifically Saudi Arabia. The oil-rich kingdom has intervened in the conflict in neighboring Yemen against the Houthi rebel group. Prosecutors said the men's attempts to contact Saudi officials were unsuccessful. The men were aware that their plans for military intervention in Yemen would inevitably require them to kill people, and they were aware that civilians might be injured and killed too, prosecutors said.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New Zealand's first indigenous Maori woman to be named Governor General, Dame Cindy Kiro, was formally sworn into the largely ceremonial role in Parliament in Wellington today, pledging to reach out to migrants and marginalized citizens. Speaking to a small audience at the swearing-in ceremony, Dame Cindy said she was proud of her dual Maori and British heritage. The Governor-General carries out constitutional and ceremonial duties in the former British colony on behalf of the British monarch, who remains the country's official head of state. Communities develop resilience when people feel connected, have a sense of belonging, and have a place to stand, Dame Cindy said in a speech at the ceremony. Many Maori, who account for about 17% of New Zealand's population, are still disadvantaged socially and economically. Maori are overrepresented in statistics for criminal justice and health problems, and the majority of children ending in state care are from the community. Dame Cindy has had a career in academics and held leadership roles at several New Zealand universities. She holds a PhD in social policy and an MBA in business administration from the University of Auckland and Massey University, and was the first in her family to achieve a university qualification. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. And congratulations to Dame Cindy, by the way. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.